Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fanitarium. Today's guest is someone who has been on our show a lot, and we've been on his show a lot. He's a longtime friend of the show. He does podcasts, and most recently, he's been doing audio dramas. Now he has season 2 of his superhero audio drama set to debut, so we're going to have him on the show for a nice little chat. Now, we don't have one of Zach's epic intros. Sorry, Scott, about that one. But to introduce Scott Murray, why don't we just introduce him with some of this music that Potoku Studios did for us for our Let's Talk Fandom intro. And since it's awesome, let's just play it. And then we'll get straight to our interview with Scott Murray in the Fanitarium. Today, entering the Fanitarium, I have a longtime friend of the show, and I don't know if we've been on more, if I'm on more on your shows or you on mine, but I have Scott Murray on, who has done a lot of podcasts, dating back years, so that I've been watching of his stuff, and he has a special project which is entering its second season, which I guess we're going to start by just introduce your audio drama that's now entering its second season, especially for those that might not have heard season 1, so they can start binging that as season 2 is preparing to launch on Monday now.
Yes, and the episodes are there's 6 episodes per season, and they run about 20 to 30 minutes a piece, so it's pretty easy to get through it if you want to binge the first season.
So with your audio drama, it's an audio drama about superheroes and crime fighting.
A little bit. It was an interesting approach to it because I didn't want to do the stereotypical cookie cutter easy thing, which is I'm going to make a cool hero, give him a cool origin story, and then just send him off to fight crime. I just thought, well, A, I thought that was just something that would be just too typical. And B, it was already intimidating enough that the idea that you're creating a new superhero, because there's just so many great ones and so many great writers out there, you almost don't feel worthy making one saying, hey, check this one out. So I decided to, instead of do it that way, I decided to kind of do it through the eyes of 2 other people. So I've got these 2 characters named Reggie and Wyatt, who are, when we first meet them, they're just a couple of guys trying to make viral videos. They're doing this little ghost hunting thing that goes bad, and while they're out shooting, they accidentally catch footage of this woman who's decided that she's going to become the crime fighter in town. She calls herself the Crimson Crane, and just by catching a few accidental moments of footage of her, they become a big deal, and they create a website called the Crimson Files, where they attempt to keep track of her in some form or fashion. But ironically, they kind of need each other, because when I say that I wanted to do something different, I went by the idea that if someone announced one day that, hey, I'm going to be a superhero in town, I think it'd be kind of silly to say, well, then everybody would embrace that. It's almost like Kick-Ass in a way. So she's trying to make a name for herself, trying to prove herself, and she's having a hard time with it. But then these guys can help her reputation, and they can help her, and she can help them. And it just turns into this full-blown team of people that work with her as they attempt to, in the first season, legitimize themselves. And then the second season, they're actually out there trying to make something happen and start to face some real challenges.
Yeah, and of course, if people want to see it directly, there is an actual website, thecrimsonfiles.com. It's all there. It's easy to find. So that is very convenient for finding this one. So with Crimson Files, I did Star Wars audio dramas, and my main goal when I started off was, I want to see if I can even do this. Just do one episode at a time, if it's even possible. When you started this, though, you had already been doing kind of quasi-audio drama style stuff in your previous shows, Assembly of Geek and so on. Did that give you confidence to say, I can do this? Or was there something else inside you that said, I want to make this now?
There were a lot of factors in this. I was actually a kid. I'm going to date myself, but, it won't be the first or the last time. When I was a kid, I made my own little audio dramas, although I was doing all the voices, which I can't say was really different from one voice to the other. But I used to make audio stories in my room as a kid using multiple tape recorders and an SK1 keyboard for sound effects, and then I would get boxes for when people fell into stuff and whatever else. My parents always wondered why I was doing that, and like to think now that it led me to this. And I always wanted to try it, because now I can do all that digitally, obviously. And Assembly of Geeks definitely helped. And I found myself throughout Assembly of Geeks, there was actually a moment where I thought, wouldn't it be cool to take the Assembly of Geeks group, all the hosts, and actually do like a mini story? I actually was thinking about doing that at one point in time, taking our group and putting us in like a 30-minute story just to try it, because as you remember, Assembly of Geeks only had just little bitty, sometimes 3 to 5 minute sections of the podcast for story. And we usually would take a break in the summer. And at one point in time, I thought about making just an Assembly of Geeks audio drama with something happening at the fortress and all that. And I just never got around to it. And so I've always had the idea of attempting this in the back of my head, because I knew, due to my background here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, doing video production in the local independent film space, I had connections to some actors and talent agents and people I'd worked with, so that probably wouldn't be too big of a challenge. But like you said, it was like, how big of a beast is that going to be, trying to put that together and get it out and make it work and have people like it. And I don't know what it was, but I was wrapping up vacation in May, and I just got this incredible surge of, yep, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to do it. And so that really is all it took at that point. So I think there were a lot of factors, maybe even dating far back to my childhood, that led to this. But if we're talking about in the immediate, history, I would say that, yeah, Assembly of Geeks definitely helped me kind of visualize what could be possible. It was just a matter of thinking about it on a grander scale.
Which I can definitely see, because I remember getting that same emotion of, I'm just going to do this, I'm just going to write it, we're going to make it and see what happens. I think the biggest challenge for me was, since I was going more science fiction with Star Wars, there's only so many sound effects you have access to, and it can get very hard to do certain action scenes when you have like 10 sounds.
Yeah.
And then you can't really make some of those sounds very easily. And so, the challenge is, what can you do? And I ended up writing around this later, with later seasons, is what can you do with the sounds you have that will still work and tell the story, rather than saying, think about it like a movie, think about it like, what can you do with what the limitations you have and make it work?
Well, I did a couple of things. I am a big fan of Fiverr, and I had seen that there were people there that would have, they did productions, had access to all kinds of stuff, and they would sell you, 1,000 sound effects for like $15. The royalty-free stuff that they had, it gave them a way to continue. Since they did production, I guess it kind of gave them a way to also make a little money on the side. So that was one of the things I did, and I got a ton of sound effects that way. And sometimes that, it's not a guarantee that it's always going to have what you want, but then there's a means of getting creative. There are times where I will search something that I would think, oh, this will definitely be in the library, and it's not. Or it's something really, really obscure. So if I can't get that obscure sound, I will find something else that I think would sound like it, because I'll have to stop and think, okay, fundamentally, if I only heard this sound, what else would I think it could be? And if I think, okay, well, I need a pop, but I need this kind of pop, but I don't have this kind of pop. Well, then I'll get a firecracker, and then I'll change the pitch of that sound to deeper, because I need something that doesn't sound nearly as light. I need something deeper, and then I'll take this other sound effect of this crash and merge those two together and create something that sounds like it. So that would be the other thing I would do, is if I couldn't find exactly what I was looking for, sometimes I can manipulate other sounds to at least pull off the impression that that's what you're hearing. And then as I went into season 2, I found this website called Storyblocks. And what I love about this, you read what the concept behind this is, and you think, geez, it's about time, because I know, you and I both have dealt with this. other podcasters deal with this. They want to have maybe some music and sound effects, and you might go to a site that talks about royalty free and podcast use and all this, but then there's still all these other little things that may limit you or confuse you as to what's legal, what's going to get you in trouble, what's going to get you flagged on YouTube, and it just drives you nuts. Well, what Storyblocks did is they've just got all of these sound effects and music that they basically say, for this level of membership per month, I think if you do 15 a month, it's unlimited, and you are absolutely allowed to use it for whatever you want.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I think if you do a typical license, it's like 1 million uses, which, I think we've got plenty of room for something like that. But they actually promote themselves as, are you tired of hitting websites for your podcast that, have all these rules and stuff? And yes, you can do this. No, you can do this, and confusion. It says, skip the confusion, pay this per month, and just go in and get what you need. And that's been a godsend for season 2.
So like on Storyblocks, you'd go to, I think the audio one's called Audio Blocks on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool.
You go into audio, and then it breaks down into sound effects and music and that sort of thing. And what's cool too is some of those, if you're looking for a song, there's actually songs there that you can download that are within that license that have lyrics. In fact, there's a scene in our first episode that involves a song that I needed. I needed a really kind of quirky song for this scene, and I didn't even realize that I wanted quirky until I found this on Storyblocks. And I picked up this song called Hillbillies on Speed. and it's done by a group called the Hillbilly Hellcats. And they're an actual band, and apparently this is a really popular song of theirs that they've been doing for like over 10 years or something. And I was able to utilize that, and it was perfect for the scene I was using. I don't use a lot of songs with with lyrics, because if people are talking, then it can kind of get distracting. But for this particular thing, that was perfect. And I didn't, up to that point, I didn't know what I was going to do, because I needed a song with lyrics. And then I just thought, I'm going to hit Storyblocks and see if they have any songs with lyrics. And boom, they had a ton of them for alternative rock, country, and everything.
So another challenge that I've had when it came to doing these is, which we were talking about a little before we started recording, is when professionals do something like this, like for example, Audible right now does a lot of their own original audio drama or quasi dramatized books and so on, but they usually have people come into a studio, the same studio, and record together, or at least studios of equal quality. While when we do ones like this one, you just hope the other person has a mic that's relatively close to what yours sound like, because if people don't understand this, every mic sounds different. No matter what, every mic will sound different, and every room sounds different depending on what you have on the walls, where you're recording, sounds in the background, and so you have to somehow mix all these different microphones of various quality of various people and make it sound like they're all talking to each other. And that can be quite a challenge when some people use their phone, some people use, their laptop.
Yeah. Yeah, I've tried to find a happy medium with that. The first thing I did was I'm basically funding this myself, and I don't have a lot of income to go to a big state of the art studio that charges $100 an hour or something. I can't do anything like that. But I got lucky, and I found a studio in McKinney, Texas. When I found them, they had just opened. It's a small space. The guy that launched it was basically trying to turn it into a studio for local bands to be able to rehearse and record at an affordable rate and something local, which is awesome. And I just emailed him and said, hey, I'm doing this. Your rates are really, really affordable. I mean, we're not doing music, but could we just grab a few mics and set up in there? And he goes, yeah, let's do it. So and there's challenges there, because he hasn't been able to completely make it a fully soundproof room. So I do have to filter out, background noises sometimes, not background noise, but some of that, that room ambient sound that sometimes can work for you. If you've got your characters in a room, you can just, room ambience is already there. But as far as I try to have everybody there, I did schedule 4 or 5 recording sessions, and I coordinate it with the entire cast, so at least we're all on similar microphones. Where it gets challenging for me sometimes is I will go to Fiverr for other roles. I need a police officer that runs on the scene and has 4 lines. So I don't really feel comfortable, having someone who might live in, on the other side of town drive all the way out to McKinney to say 4 lines and go home.
Yeah.
Nor do you want to pay for pay for studio time for that. So I use Fiverr. And yeah, sometimes, the nice thing about Fiverr is you can hear them talk when they promote their own stuff and show samples of the work. You already get a sense of what kind of mic they have. And there are times still where, I've got a guy that's done stuff for me off of Fiverr, and he's played a reoccurring smaller character in Crimson Files, and he's got an awesome mic. I mean, you can tell he's in a studio that is just soundproof, 110%, and it does sound different, but, to some degree, I just have to let some of that go.
Yeah.
Because I have to look at it from the standpoint of, hey, at least the audience can understand what everybody's saying. And it's not such a discrepancy where I think it jars you. You might notice it, or you might not, but I don't think it jars you. It's not like when you're listening to a talk show podcast and the host is crystal clear and he's at one volume and the guest is on another mic at a lower volume and you're having to turn it up and down the entire time.
Yeah.
It's nothing like that. So I think it's just like anything else. You have to be, I get obsessive about it because I'm really obsessed with editing and doing the best I can for the listener. But you just have to at some point in time go, all right, I need to leave this alone or I'm going to drive myself crazy. At some point in time, people aren't going to care as much as I think they might when they can hear the dialogue and understand what's going on.
Yeah, and I think for me it got to the point where because mine took years, people moved, people changed, people's computers die. It got to the point where, like, if a quality is at a certain level, you're wearing a helmet now. Congratulations, you have a helmet.
Perfect.
And
there you go.
even then it
Plan
wasn't
B.
perfect, but helmets with those, stormtrooper voices, it fixes a lot of issues. Still doesn't sound amazing, but at least you have an in-story reason to talk that way.
That's right. That's plan B.
And I know in the season 1 you had I got beat up. I think I was a couple of goons a goon that got beat up in one of them. I think.
Yes, by Grandma Jeannie.
Yes.
You don't mess with Grandma Jeannie. She's
No.
a sweet old lady, but she will mess you up. Yeah, that was such a fun scene because I really wanted to give Grandma Jeannie a twist. Grandma Jeannie in the story is the grandmother of the lead character Crimson Crane, and she's kind of a cross between badass Alfred and then Aunt Harriet from the 1966 Batman series. If Aunt Harriet knew martial arts, that's Grandma Jeannie, I think, and that makes her a lot of fun. She'll say the most random things, the most random sweet things, and then if she has to step in and get on the action, she'll do that too.
So when you finished season 1, because I had this experience when I finished seasons, were you, as soon as you finished editing, instantly thinking, I'm going to do season 2, or did you have to take a break? Because I had, with season 1 of mine finished, I was like, okay, I'm actually writing the next season already, darn it. And just continued going, and they kind of actually ended up overlapping due to an issue. But, and then when I finished season 2, I had to take a break and then start writing season 3. Were you instantly ready to go, or were you take a break, thought about it, and then came back?
That's a great question. I needed the break. I mean, it was a beast to edit.
Yes.
But I knew that going in, and I not only knew that because I knew these were 30-minute shows, and they were all going to need all kinds of editing and piecing together and filtering, and then music and sound effects, and you'll spend hours and hours and hours and hours just sometimes on one scene, depending on what's happening. So when I finally rendered episode 6, I mean, I immediately thought, okay, I need a break. But part of that was needing the break. But then I also wanted to, this was experimental to me, despite the fact that I had done some similar things. I wanted a chance to just see what happened. If we let it run like a year, you're talking about 6 episodes. So if we let it run for several months and you want to see if people find it, you want to look at your statistics and see if people, at least based on what you're looking at, were staying for all six, or if a couple episodes had a bunch and the others had less, that meant that obviously they weren't staying for the whole series. I wanted to see how it would do, because then at that point in time, I think that part of the decision could be, is it worth all that work if people don't seem to be engaged in it, or they're having trouble finding it, or that sort of thing. So I was really kind of stepping back and just waiting to see what happened. I didn't know if I was going to do season 2, and I wanted it to be fair to the cast too, because while it doesn't take us a ton of time, they do have to drive to the studio, they do have other things going on, it is time out of their day, and I want it to be worth it, and then of course all the time it takes to do the post-production stuff. So around June, I took a look at the statistics again. People were still finding it. People were all the episodes had a good amount of episodes for something that was only 6 and was done last year. New people were finding it. It looked like everybody was listening to all 6. So I thought, okay, well now I just want to see if the whole cast wants to do this again. Because if I sit down and write it and the cast goes, I don't know if I want to do it again, it's not going to do any good. So I sent an email out to the whole cast and said, hey, I think it might be worth doing a second season. Do you guys want to do that? And everybody wrote back and said, yeah, let's totally do it. So, I really just I took a break, but I also wanted to see what would happen and then make a determination if, we really need to put all the work in again. I think we were all interested in it because we had so much fun, but it is a lot of work, and, it helps if people are listening, and thank goodness people were.
Which is good. So what can people expect who listened to season 1 expect to be, because usually with season 2 you'd want it to be bigger and better and so on. It's 6 episodes. Well, what can people expect as far as new things or newcomers?
Well, the fun thing for me in season 2 was I didn't have to do as much story about getting you used to these characters and introducing you to them. Now everybody knows them, and of course the thing that helps me is now I know their voice because I've got real actors on their voices. So now, and I think that's one of my strengths. I can write voice really well. So now that I know how everybody how everybody sounds, it helps me write new dialogue for them. So we had a lot of stuff about kind of showing you how the Crane started and how, who Riot and Reggie were in the first season. But we also had a really cool villain in season 1. I got probably a lot of feedback, most of my feedback from him. Our villain in season 1 was named Drench, who was this villain who would fill up water guns with some pretty dangerous materials and cause havoc. And he was also trying to achieve some other things against the Crane and the local police force. So that was my other challenge in season 2. It's like, man, everybody just talked about that villain, so what am I going to do here? We do have two or three new characters. I can't go into a whole lot of information about a couple of them because the way the bad guy does things, or the bad girl does things in this one, and how the villain actually comes to fruition and what she does is very unique. And I think it's really most important to go through that journey without knowing a whole lot about what she does, because it even confused the actress that plays her. She's like, why am I doing this? I'm like, don't worry. When you get 4, 5, and 6, you'll know why she's doing this.
Is this the character played by the Dallas Maverick dancer?
Yes.
The Marilyn Monroe, Marilyn Manson character one?
Yes.
That's such a weird combo, which I want to...
It really is.
Gwendolyn Murphy? Yes.
Yeah. I've known Gwendolyn I wrote this part for her. I've known her for, 14, 15 years. Back when I was doing some local production, she played a role for me in another project I did years ago, and she was perfect for this. So really what I wanted to do for season 2 was I thought, okay, well, let's just put this like 6 months after the end of season 1. And now everybody's kind of established, everybody knows who the Crane is. They all kind of accept her now. So really you figure at this point in time, they've had a bunch of little victories and nothing's really challenged them. And considering how grounded all the characters are, they're not just automatic, badasses that just, train themselves and, for a couple of weeks and became awesome people. There's a lot of humanity to them. And they all kind of fell into this together. So I thought they needed to have something that would challenge the stability of everything they built last season. Give them, they're used to winning. What if they started losing? And, if you got two guys that are just video producers that suddenly are actual involved in real crime fighting and something starts to threaten them, what does that do? And all these people that, made this choice, could I create something that would challenge them, make them second guess why they're doing it, or if they should be doing it, or if it's all a mistake? And why would that be happening? And why would someone do that to them? And I was really happy with how that all kind of came together. So if anything, you definitely get a cool villain. You get to see them really get challenged. And I think that you'll like how everything kind of evolves over time into the predicament that really is kind of at the crux of what challenges them, and how it wasn't just it wasn't just another cookie cutter situation where I went, okay, I'm going to create this cool villain, drop them into episode 1, and they fight them for 6 episodes. There's a method to the entire thing, and I think people are going to like what happens there. We also have a new character named Frank Elliott, who is the chief of police. He's really fun. He's a really big skeptic of the Crane and what she's doing, and that only compounds the problems they have this season. So, yeah, so a lot of next level stuff, but really the most important thing is we're out of the introductory phase. They've been winning, and now they're really going to get challenged.
Cool. And so how long did it take you to write the season? Because you had 6 episodes, about 20 minutes each. So usually that's 20 to... Well, actually, it depends how action scenes, but about 20 to 25 pages a season. So, episode, so 150 pages or so. How long did it take you to write?
It's hard to say because with everything else I've got going on, I would just have to find time to get back to them. We were recording, I think, 1, 2, and 3 while I was writing 4, 5, and 6. So I would just say that, the entire production from writing to recording, I would say took about a couple of months from beginning to end, because I really started post-production, I think, in late July, and we started all this in June. So, and then I think we wrapped production like the first week of August or something. So it's hard to remember exactly how long it took to write everything, because I would sometimes be able to be at home on a weekend, spend quality time writing an entire episode, or sometimes I'd have to be working on it during a lunch break at work. So putting all that together, it's hard to think of. Everything took, I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 weeks to get it all ready for post-production.
Are you the lone writer, or do you have a co-writer?
It's just me.
Wow, no safety net. I like the co-writer to go, I sent them my stuff, and they went, we're going to make this sound better. Okay, I'll give it back in a week.
No, that's good. You know what I do? I will actually... My wife and I have a lot of the same interests. We tend to like a lot of the same things, but she is also a hardcore book reader and not afraid to say what she thinks about things. And the thing that I love about the fact is, if I do something that doesn't make sense to her, or could be done better, or maybe she catches something, she'll tell me. I mean, it's not one of those things where she's gonna, because she's married to me, can tell me everything's brilliant. So I do let her read the scripts before I send it to the talent, just to see, were you engaged? Did you care? Were you interested in it? Did something not make sense? And that's been even better this time around, since she not only did that in season 1, she's also listened to them from beginning to end. So now she might as well be a listener who can give me feedback on characters she's now familiar with, and whether this made sense or whether this works. And then even better, I was able to go, okay, well, you heard season 1, you've read season 2, what do you think? And she really liked how this one turned out. So I do have her, and I'm very happy that I have her. I also sent the scripts to a colleague who also listens to other fiction podcasts to get her feedback. And that's been good. So I do have people that can give me feedback.
That's good, because as a writer myself, you have certain habits that you don't always catch when you read it, or certain, heck, even typos that you don't catch when you read it, and you just need someone's eyes on it because you're too familiar with what you just wrote that someone else has to look at it.
Yeah, and I'm just, I think it's really important to get some of that, some of that feedback from somebody else. And it's like anything else. I mean, even if I'm doing marketing, I want someone to look at something I did before I send it out for the world to see if at all possible. But yeah, but I'm just I'm still taking courses and things on story. I'm going through some coursework now on stories and video games, and they all kind of cross over. But what's interesting is, I guess it was back in the early 2000s, I actually attended Robert McKee's story seminar, 3-day story seminar. And for something that I did 20 years ago, I'm amazed at what I remember. As someone as ADD as me, I'm amazed at what I remembered in an intensive 3-day, 8-hour-a-day story course. I still remember a lot of stuff from that as far as what I'm doing here. And that's been very helpful.
Nice. So I've been, following a lot of your podcasts over the years, and I know a lot of other people have as well. So what are you doing podcast-wise now outside of Crimson Files?
Anymore, now I'm still doing Comic Book Noob, which is has been a great little project. I mean, it was a decision based on the fact that I wanted to find the right comics to read before I saw Guardians of the Galaxy. Searched online and found that other people were asking the same questions, and I thought, what if I made a podcast that brought 2 experts on and answered that question, just covered the basic information of a character and then told you where to go read if you wanted to read it. And I've been doing that now with Regina Davis and Matt Moore for about 4 or 5 years, and it is still growing a lot. It's probably my most listened to podcast. It's called Comic Book Noob. And then we started a Disney Plus streamcast, or Disney Plus podcast called the Disney Plus Streamcast. And right now we're just covering, we've had some really cool guests on. We had a Disney Imagineer on because there's going to be that Imagineer series. We've had people come on to talk about The Mandalorian, or Mandalorians. And then we've got a show coming up about the What If comic book series, since that's going to be an animated series on Disney Plus. So we're covering things like that, and then when Disney Plus launches, we're going to start doing recaps of several shows like The Mandalorian and The World According to Jeff Goldblum and things like that. So that's the Disney Plus Streamcast, and that's pretty much most of it. I'm still doing an interview show called Tune In, Take Notice, but it's very seasonal.
Yeah.
It's very seasonal because everything going on. I'm trying to finish season 2 right now. I've got a couple more people to interview, but I mean, I do 10 of those, and then when I can get around to doing the next 10, that's when it comes out. I'm hoping to start that up later this month, but so much going on, and then this thing takes a lot of my time.
Well, yeah, and also when it comes to interviews, in my experience, they come in batches. Like, you'll have an entire month where no one will respond, and then you have a month where like 7 people respond and say we can all do it the same week. It's just comes and goes.
And it's funny too because I mean, my very first podcast ever was a celebrity interview podcast, and I was surprised at a lot of the people that I got, but it's funny how that works because this is still true today, that there would be that occasional person you would email to come on who I thought, oh, they'll definitely do it. I mean, what are they doing? It's like, I can't imagine they're going to be picky, or not be interested. And then you don't get them. And then you send that email out to the guest you think you have next to zero prayer of getting because of maybe their name or, maybe the big project they're involved in. And they tell you yes. That was what was always kind of interesting to me. There'd be people that you thought you were absolutely going to get that you wouldn't. And then there would be people you would get that you thought you had no chance, but you actually had them on.
Yeah, and even then, some of them you have to wait like a year for, and some of them it's like I can do it right now. Like, oh, right now. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I think that was like early on one of our early interviews with Jennifer Hale, who is huge for voice acting. And the day Mass Effect 3 came out, she responded to me like, "I have half an hour right now. You ready?" I'm like, let's do this.
Yeah, it was a lot easier when I was freelancing. I had a lot more flexibility, but now I'm working off-site 40 hours a week, so that sometimes can be a challenge if evenings or weekends aren't possible. I mean, now for Tune In, Take Notice, I mean, I try to give variety. So one day it might be an actor, one day it might be an author. And shoot, I even had an author who had written a book tied to Stranger Things, and he couldn't do evenings or weekends, so we weren't able to do it. I was like, okay, well, no evenings and no weekends. Okay, well, that was a little bit of a surprise, but that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, and then of course when it comes to any sort of voice actors, you got to kind of have a bend over backwards because their job is literally they could get hired at any moment, any time, and that is priority because that is their livelihood. So things
Yeah,
happen.
they're fun to talk to, though. I mean, just like anything else in that space, I mean, you have to be passionate and love what you're doing. I know you've interviewed a heck of a lot more than I have, but Fred Tatasciore was really fun to talk to, and it's been so cool to, after I talked to him about doing the Hulk, then he goes off into Soldier 76 for Overwatch, and I'm like, golly, I want to talk to him about that now.
Well, it's like I happened one time when I interviewed Sam Witwer, and
Hmm.
we weren't going like we talked to him about Clone Wars, and we weren't going to talk about being human because we're going to save that for next time. The
Oh
next
yes,
week, being human was canceled. I'm like, what?
yes.
What? You knew this when I was talking to you. Oh.
That's the other thing about the voice acting interviews too is, gosh, timing. Timing can, be a huge thing. I'll never forget that, when the first spin-off podcast Assembly of Geeks did was Peggy Carter podcast. And that was a random decision I made because we were talking so much about it. We were also so excited for Agent Carter. And I thought, well, gosh, why don't we just make a podcast about it and we'll do recaps and stuff. Random decision. And yet it turned into a really big thing for us. And of course, first season we do it, and the second season, I get to interview Haley Atwell about it, and then of course, not only thank God did I try it then because there was no season 3, but the other thing that was so funny about it was I did the interview like in November. The show wasn't going to run until December, and I thought, okay, should I promote the fact that Haley's on this time, or yeah, at this point in time, or is that too far out? And I thought, oh, I don't care. Let's just send it out there. So I went on Twitter and I promoted that she was going to be on. Be sure to check it out, like December 15th or whatever it was. And then she retweeted it, and that was the last retweet she did, I think, before she left Twitter. So I'm like, man, if I would have waited one more day to promote that thing, I wouldn't have had that. And then of
Wow.
course then we didn't lose. Then we weren't able to come back and do it again because they canceled the show, and I'm still bummed about that. That whole experience was really really fun. I hold out some small hope that maybe they'll bring back some sort of Agent Carter thing
Well, we do know
besides What
she's
If.
coming back, yeah, in What If as
Yes.
Captain America, I guess.
Yeah, What If Peggy had been infused with the super serum instead of Steve Rogers.
Yeah, 'cause isn't there my brain seems to say I remember a comic where she is Captain America.
Hmm.
I remember this existing. I have not read it. There's a lot of convolution when it comes to Captain America in the comics. There's just a lot of Captain America.
I have a feeling that the two people I do comic book noob with would know all about it.
I know
We
stuff
did
about
do
that
it.
man
We
as
did,
Spider-Man, but I don't know everything about Captain America.
yeah, we did do an Agent Carter episode. We actually did two. We did one on Agent Carter, and then remember season 2, the villain was Madame Mask.
Yep.
So we did one on Madame Mask right before Agent Carter season 2 came out. That was man. We had a lot going on back then, just around Agent Carter. All the
And
more reason why that show didn't need to be canceled.
and now you look at it and you're like, okay, there are 7 Marvel shows going to Hulu,
Yeah.
7 more on Disney Plus. The CW has like 7 shows. There are
Mm.
5 more on DC Universe. Probably 5 or 6 more DC shows on AMC and other channels. Oh boy. Where do you
It's a great
focus?
time to be a geek, isn't it?
Great time to
This
be a
was,
geek, but really hard to focus on anything. Like I'm trying to like, okay, can I afford to pay attention to all the thing on DC Plus? I mean, on Disney Plus and Hulu when it comes to Marvel? Oh
I
no.
know.
Do I want
And
my
they're all
burning
going to have,
skull on a
their separate.
motorcycle or do I want Falcon?
Yeah, right.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I am very much Team Ghost Rider when it comes to most comic stuff because he has the coolest design ever, and so it's just oh, you give me Ghost Rider and Howard the Duck, and the other side gives me
There's a tandem.
and they're going to be together, and Dazzler and Modoc. My
Gosh, I know. And the thing is there I'm sure that there are tons of things in development that we don't know about yet, that they're not ready to tell us. I mean, I think proof of that just in Disney Plus alone is is proof because we find out that they're going to do the Mandalorian, then we find out they're going to do Cassian, then we find out they're going to do Obi-Wan. And then, we knew we were going to get some Marvel shows, and then all the Marvel shows get announced, and it's like, oh, well, that's not all we're doing. We're also doing She-Hulk and Miss Marvel and Moon Knight. it's like I just think that they've got a plan for the next 50 years, and there's just, it's just going to inundate us, which I'm completely cool with. It's just like you said, it's a matter of keeping up with it all.
And the good thing about the next phase is it doesn't seem like they're making it where every single show you have to watch. Like it'd be good if you do, but they're giving you saying you like this, you can watch this. You like this, you can watch that. Rather than with no Avengers film, we don't necessarily have to see everything to see what happens at the end. Necessarily, we don't know this for sure yet, but it looks like you like Doctor Strange. Well, these are two shows you should probably pay attention to. You like this side? Here's a show you could probably pay attention to do that one. Or if you like to see what craziness happens, What If exists
Yeah,
and see
yeah.
where you go.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that helps a little bit is at least with Disney Plus, it's not like Netflix. The Marvel shows on Netflix, they're not going to drop them all at once.
Yep.
It is going to be a week to week thing.
The
So
DC model, which worked really well, it helped
yeah,
Titans a lot.
yeah, and it just, it forces you to make room for some other things along the rest of the week.
Yes, you don't have to sit there and your eyes dry out. You can just enjoy
Yeah.
it one time a week, come back the next week and enjoy it. And then also, it definitely helps with the conversation though, because if you think about it, how many people have time to stay stream the entire season of Stranger Things season
Absolutely.
3 in one night where everyone else is talking about it instead week to week? Like that was a phenomenon that happened with Game of Thrones that I've never seen with anything else so much in my lifetime. Where every episode, even if you didn't like it, people were talking about it that
Yeah.
day.
And
And
everybody's on the same page because no one's on episode 5,
yep.
or episode 25 while, oh crap, I'm only on episode 10.
And HBO
Yeah.
encouraged that. They encouraged you to talk about
Yeah.
it every single time, which is not
Smart.
common in shows. Most people say don't talk about, don't spoil. HBO said talk, let's talk, and they did.
Yeah.
And I think Disney
Yeah.
Plus is doing that so that every week you can talk, and it gets more people to sign up for the show. And if it does what DC Universe did, I think Titans increased viewership 300% from episode 1 to the finale because people talked because the trailer was terrible, and
Yeah.
then people started watching it going, this is actually really good, and it grew week to week. Now Disney Plus has a one up already because they have Marvel shows and Star Wars that people will pay attention to, but their goal is to have people talk and build it.
And that's smart because there's just so many things now that can trigger, and maybe it's because we have so much to watch. I know that can be true of me. There's just so many things that can trigger you to decide you're not even going to watch it. It might be because you looked on Rotten Tomatoes and it's pulling 25%. Or like you said, it's amazing sometimes how a trailer can even go, gosh, that looks terrible. I'm not going to do that. But you have people that will try it out. And the only way you might be able to pull some of those people back in is because people are talking about it. Oh no, the trailer sucked, but this was way this is way better. But those trailers can be pretty important. I know with Crimson Files, I've even attempted to this season especially. I put out a couple of things. One thing that I tried to make a teaser to kind of signify what happens, and I'm happy with it. But it's even more challenging because it's all audio. I had to sit there and think, okay, well, if this is audio, how am I going to do this? But maybe create a little bit of a visual. And it's voices of everybody kind of panicking because of all the things that are happening, and it's just a visual of the Cranes logo cracking as things intensify. And I think it was effective, but it was really a challenge, and it can be even more challenging if you're got a show like that and you're trying to balance what you want people to see and what you don't want people to see yet, but also pull them in. And you got to have people that know what they're doing. We even had discussions like that on our podcasts about, sometimes a trailer that's supposed to even be a comedy and you don't laugh through the whole thing. And you're thinking, well, is it because they just didn't want you to laugh a whole lot and save the funniest parts for the movies instead of what typically happens, or the funniest parts are in the trailer?
Or you have it
you
like
go see the movie.
or you have it like, say, Orville, where you watch the trailer and like, oh, this is a comedy of Seth MacFarlane, and then you watch it like, this is actually more Star Trek than some Star Trek shows out right now, and it's not.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and
There's
now it's a
nothing
Hulu
worse
show,
than
more Hulu.
yeah. There's nothing worse than having a movie give you the impression it's one genre and it's actually another. I remember Robin Williams made a movie called Toys.
Oh,
And
I remember that.
they
That is not what I thought it was going to be.
yeah, they pushed that thing like it was a comedy, and it was not.
Or Gremlins, historically. Oh, look, it's
Yeah.
a Magua. La la la. Let's take our kids to see. Oh, there's a blender.
Oh, was it Toys? Maybe Toys was just the movie that looked good and it wasn't. There was also that show Robin did called Jack, where he was he was like a kid that
Yep.
was growing too fast. And because it's Robin Williams and gets to act like a child, it was like, they made it look like, oh, it's Robin Williams and he's a kid trapped in an adult's body. But the problem is, the drama was he was really a kid trapped in an adult's body, and it was depressing. So yeah, maybe that's what I was thinking. Toys was just a movie that I thought was going to be good that really wasn't. that was the misleading thing about that trailer.
So, one question I have that's going to be one of the last ones we do. With so many shows on Disney Plus, on DC Universe, on the CW, on Netflix, on Prime, Hulu, if you had to prioritize 3 to 5 shows that you think are must watches as far as your fandom goes, what shows would they be?
Well, the hard part is trying to remember everything that's coming and when they're coming. Because Mandalorian it's like we talked a little bit about that on a podcast recently, and it's like, if you could only watch X amount, what would you do? And I said, well, the moment they say Star Wars, that's already the top of the list. I don't care what it is. So, Mandalorian will be must watch as I wait for the others to come. I'm trying to remember what else. I still got all these shows that I like to watch on regular TV, like Goldbergs and stuff like that. That's about to come back. But I'll
Superstore for me.
Oh, really?
Superstore's almost back. Working in retail, that show clicks right on.
I'm sure. There's things I'm like anticipating for, like, the next season. Like I loved The Boys, and I'm ready for more of that. And they're already working on the second season for that thing, so I'm ready for that to come back. I've had some shows that I loved watching that aren't coming back, like Humans on AMC and Into the Badlands on AMC are both gone. So I think I'm going to be spending most of my time on Disney Plus, but there's some stuff coming out on Prime and Netflix that I'm gonna try to check out. I'm watching Dark Crystal right now and I'm loving it.
Nice.
So yeah.
One thing I worry about Disney Plus is a lot of the stuff that we know is coming over the next 3 years.
I know.
And so it's like, other than the fact that there's a lot of Disney movies and at Disney XD shows on there, which my kids are expensive and my kids can watch them. That's the big thing for me. But like, if you love fantasy, we got Lord of the Rings, we got Wheel of Time, we got Earthsea, we got Golden Compass, or his Dark Materials, whatever they call that series, Golden Compass one. You have The Witcher. You have just a plethora of like high concept fantasy all coming at the same time. I'm really excited for Batwoman because I think they got the right person to play Batwoman, and I love that design, and I'll take more Gotham City. Gotham ended. Now I need more Gotham City.
I know. I watched all of Gotham. I loved Gotham.
I loved the insanity of Gotham. I just felt bad that it ended, and you're like, okay, get the next show. It's not coming.
I know. I would
Let's
have
have the
loved
adult
to seen that
characters now.
going.
No, I
I
can't
know.
have it. But you got all these ones coming, and then of course add the animation. But I think for me, Mandalorian definitely. Batwoman, I'm very curious to see how that goes. Even though my favorite CW ones are the crazier ones, like Legends of Tomorrow, because they do weird stuff, like a giant Furbies as Norse gods. If you don't know what
Yeah.
I'm talking about, watch the show. You'll understand very soon.
Well, and
Um,
you're going to have an episode in the crossover. You're going to have Kevin Conroy playing Batman.
and we're gonna have all these other icons of DC through history. Burt Ward's in there too. As
Yes.
characters. We don't know what they're gonna do, but
I know.
you're gonna have all these people in there, and they haven't confirmed it, but I almost guarantee since Mark Hamill's already done work for the CW,
I was just
I'm
thinking that.
assuming he's in there somewhere because he's
That would be
already
awesome.
on their payroll. So, and I'm sure Kevin Conroy will be like, I'm over here, and he's like, why didn't you tell me? I'm coming too.
Yeah.
Plus, he's
Yeah.
weird enough to do almost anything they tell him to do.
I
But,
think so.
and that crossover is going to be interesting because you get to see Arrow end, and you get to see where they're going to go. You have multiple Supermen in there. How are they going to have Brandon
Mhm.
Routh as Adam and Superman?
Yeah, that one I don't know.
But it should be fun.
Yeah,
That
it should be.
I don't know. CW just does crazy things that I wish Warner Brothers would do, but Warner Brothers spends so much money. I don't think they could afford to do craziness like that. But CW
Yeah.
does a lot of crazy stuff that
They do.
you'll never see on the big screen. And of course, I'm looking for Ghost Rider because Ghost Rider is great, and that was the best season of Agents of Shield, by far for me. As soon as Luna showed up as Ghost Rider, I was sold. And then
Yeah.
he left for half the season,
I know.
sadly. And if they give me Blaze at the same time, awesome.
Go for that.
But yeah, so why don't you promote where people can find your stuff and find your shows, and if they want to ask you more questions about it, and pay attention as season 2 premieres on Monday, September 9th.
September 9th. Yeah. 9 days into September already is really kind of hard to believe.
I've linked and it's 9 days in.
That's one of the things I do is I it's always kind of fun to look back on a project that is almost complete and think about, gosh, just a few days ago, it was an idea. And I actually sometimes will take like a mental note, like, episode 1, season 2, I write the first word and I make like a mental note of it to think that this is just one word now, but in 3 months, it's going to be a full blown production that's going to come out for people to hear. And it's just amazing to think that, here we are in September and that started in June. It's incredible how fast it all went. But yeah, I mean, I'm on Twitter. I'm at Mr. Scott Murray on Twitter, and I'm always talking about this and geek stuff with people. So if you're there, I'm happy to connect there. Crimson Files is at the crimsonfiles.com. I always have it where people can stream or download it from the website because based on my experience, there's people who like to hit Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Stitcher, which Crimson's there, but some people just like to go to the website and just hit play. So I make it easy for people to do that. So it's crimsonfiles.com. There are previews there. There are blogs there. If you want to get a little more insight about who's in it and kind of the process, I've tried to do some production blogs there. There's previews there from 1 and 2. I've tried to put as much content as I can for people who perhaps are seeing it for the first time. So there's also a list of podcast outlets that I know of that we are on. Sometimes podcast outlets will pick you up and you don't know that you're there until later. But the typical ones were there, iHeartRadio and Spotify, Stitcher, Apple. So, so that's where the Crimson Files is. And I would love to hear what people think if they get a chance to hear it because, in podcasting, we always don't get to hear it. You can see that people are listening, and that's big. But anytime someone can say what they like or didn't like or whatnot, that's always good too.
And do you have an episode of Comic Book Noob coming up?
We do. We've had to take a little bit of we haven't been able to do it the last couple of weeks. We've had some things coming up for people that, I should say, some things happening outside of podcasts that made it hard for us to get together, which is rare on Comic Book Noob. I'm trying to remember what we're supposed to do next episode. That's what happens when you have an extended break. I can actually look up. We're doing Stumptown.
Oh, that's a comic book.
It is.
Kobe Smulders one, right?
Yes.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense now. It makes much more sense to know it's a comic book.
Yeah, doesn't it? Because of what they do in the show, and the little graphic at the end looks kind of like a comic book. So yeah, I didn't know either, because we typically will, if we haven't planned 2 or 3 in advance, I'll stop and go, okay, what do you guys want people to get some insight on this week, and we'll throw around suggestions. And then I think it was Matt or Regina went, oh, how about Stumptown? Oh, we should totally do Stumptown.
Nice.
So they know it. So yeah, we're going to talk about that, and it'll definitely provide some context if you plan on watching the show.
I know I did an episode on our YouTube channel not that long ago where I just listed out every comic book show currently on the air and ones that are coming and the channel they're on, just a list.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
Yeah.
4.5 minutes long.
Yeah, I believe it.
There's a lot that are coming, and some might never come, like Why the Last Man. Will probably never actually end up coming, or Sandman, but they still talk about them every single year.
Yeah, I mean, we did The Boys right before it hit streaming service, and we did The Kitchen.
Yep.
Because of that film. And so, lo and behold, here's another one that's based on a comic book. So we had to do it. That's what's so nice. See, I wouldn't have known that. That's why I play the comic book noob, and I ask them the questions because they're the experts. I mean, Matt covered comics for the AP for many years, and Regina grew up with comics, knows them forward and backwards, used to run her own comic book store. So they're both just so well versed, and they're so passionate about it, and their chemistry is great. And I'm so glad that all I have to do is say, okay, oh really, that's a comic book? Well, tell me more. They can just tell you what they need. So yeah, so anytime something's coming around that's attached to a comic book that you might not know, comic book noob's probably going to have it because Matt and Regina know what's coming.
And people lose sight of DC and Marvel do a lot, but outside of that one, we still have Dark Horse, we still have Valiant,
Yep.
We still have tons of manga. This year, outside of DC and Marvel, we had Hellboy, we had Alita Battle Angel. There was a couple others that my brain is leaving now, but there's been a ton that you just don't know are comic books as well, and it's a great
There's
time.
even been a couple of kind of, I don't remember if they were actually indie films, but they weren't like major studio productions. I can't remember that. There was a movie came out that I think it was called I Kill Giants.
Yes, that's a Korean manga. That's actually, I love that movie. That's a great movie.
Yeah, and we covered that, and that was totally a Matt and Regina thing. I had no idea that movie was coming, what it was about, and they go, "Oh, I Kill Giants is about to come out. We need to talk about that book."
Did it make you cry?
It is kind of a sad story.
And we had another one very close to it with A Monster Calls came out, the year before, and I guess Bridge to Terabithia is in the same vein as well. If you've seen any of those, you have an idea what to expect. That's all I'm telling.
Yeah, it's always interesting when you realize that there's some back history to something that you're going to go see. I mean, it's obviously helpful when we do things like Doctor Strange or something, and if you've never read a Doctor Strange comic book, to listen and know some things. I know for me, just being on it and asking the questions, I go see Doctor Strange, and it adds. It's not so much that I would have gone and liked it less or more, but it's nice to know more of what they're referencing and what's happening and why this is important and that sort of thing. I mean, that has advantages, but it's even more interesting when maybe you haven't even heard of the title, and yet you have an opportunity to not only go see a film or watch the show, but also read the comics.
And then if you just look at TV, just don't try. It'll overwhelm you. But thank you so much for being on, and I look forward to hearing season 2 of the Crimson Files, because season 1 was great.